And ladies and gentlemen, we are live. It is October 17th, the year 2022, and you are listening to the Voice of Reason podcast. My name, as always, hasn't changed yet, is Sean Phillips, and as usual, I am joined alongside my two co-hosts, Mr. Andy Van Beber and Travis Kirkendall. And tonight we have a very, very special, but not that kind of special guest, Hank Owens. Gentlemen, how are we all doing today?
Doing good. I just, I see that Eminem is on the broadcast, and then and then next to Eminem is, I don't know, registered, sex offender in so many states, I don't know, and then the honest guy, Travis up there, and then some fat dude. So we look like, I don't know, like a wanted poster at the post office. I have no idea.
Geez, thanks.
I'm just talking about us, Travis. You look fine.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Here all week.
Oh, we're doing good though. This is about the first time I've had to sit down all day. But life on the run.
You gotta love it. Mondays, right?
I'm not digging.
Sean, it's good to have you back.
Yeah,
good
man.
To have you on this week.
Yeah, I know.
You think? Yeah, no, it's been pretty crazy out here as more things are just kind of shuffling in motion. Again, this past week was just absolutely bonkers between getting everything ready for our show tomorrow night at the Irvine Improv. Big taping for us, kind of sending us into November and December before we head out to Mesa, Arizona to film the Red Carpet Rumble at the Bell Bank Arena Park. So it's just been crazy. It's been busy, but no complaints. I was at work all day, kind of trying to get everything squared away. I literally pulled in and then shoved some food down my face, and then now we're getting this kicked off. So, but another person that we haven't seen for a while that has been on, and if you guys are familiar with the show, you've heard him talk finances, you've heard him talk politics and penis, and it's Hank. So Hank, how you doing, man? What's new with you?
I'm good. Hopefully redeem myself for the record worst Voice of Reason shows.
No. We love it when
I didn't even watch them.
Well, it is what it is. That's tell us what are you
some things have actually changed for you since you last been on.
That's what I was getting to.
Work wise, like tell us where you were and tell us where you are now. What's new now?
Nothing's changed. We've talked since then.
Was I on the show since you switched?
I've been in my current job ever since you guys started this thing. It's been almost 2 years now.
Oh, I didn't think it had been that long.
Jeez,
Sean, where? Wow.
Look, there's only one real thing when I think about Hank. One real big long thing that I normally think of. So sometimes like the other things go off to the side.
We're too early in the show for that.
How has work been treating you? Has the company taken on any new celebrities as clients yet, or is it just still the same milk out there?
I think I could get in trouble for saying that on the second biggest podcast in the entire world.
Wow.
But I can disclose some names once under the record once we're done. But
I think we could.
What sport? Give us what sport?
I mean, all sports. I know mostly football. I trade for mostly football players, but they're arguably the greatest boxer of all time, and the king of the primals. Kind of big on social media these days.
Does he happen to like liver?
No.
Thinking that bone marrow.
Oh my God! Here we go.
I was told some names.
There we go.
No big deal.
That's pretty cool.
Jeez. That's
isn't tonight about Sean? What's the deal?
Well, yeah, our series is.
Well, it's about you and Sean.
It is about
I
you
watched
and
last week. It was really cool.
Yeah, special thanks to my buddy Jason Jarrett, Travis is ready to have him back on because we just barely touched the tip of the iceberg, but we had a lot of views last week, and we appreciate.
Barely touched the tips of what?
That's what I heard.
Oh
No,
my
no, I
God.
am teasing. No. So again, I am excited to kind of dive into this segment and then actually to get to work with Hank. We go back pretty far. And it's kind of funny because I'd love to hear Hank's side of it, how it got our friendship really kind of developed, like in the beginning stages. Because Hank and I weren't actually like extremely close when we were like younger. For the listeners that don't know, Hank, Travis, and I all went to the same school that V was a teacher at, and Hank was a year older than us. So throughout elementary school and junior high, kind of hung with different friend groups, and then Hank actually murdered one of his good friends' girlfriends or something, which is why his friends stopped talking to him. And then he got stuck with me. But I'd actually love to get that is. I'd actually love to get Hank's insight as to when we kind of first started hanging out, when it was like a regular occurring thing.
Gosh. So I always kind of liked Sean. He always made me laugh when we were little kids. You mentioned something last week. You said this Sean's episode is going to be rated R or NC-16, whatever. I was like, he really didn't get too crazy until college. He was kind of a nerdy kid in middle school. He was running around. I don't want to say speech and drama was nerdy. I think that stuff's really cool, but he could do everything. He's like he could just entertain anybody, make anybody laugh. He could sing and he could dance. I thought he was cool. I always wanted to hang out with him, but I always had my guys, my first friends, my only friends at the time, Matt, Levi, Justin, just anybody.
Did you say only friends or only fans?
Whichever one makes more money. But yeah, so I really hung out with just kind of within the grades. I didn't really know many guys that were in 4th grade, 5th grade, 6th grade, but in high school, yeah.
So you guys though, but did you guys move in, or were you Clopton straight through, or how did
No. Yeah,
I got there in what was my 4th grade year,
and which is the same year I got there, which was my 5th grade year.
And where did you come from, Hank?
Ellsbury. I was a Hoosier. That's what Dickie Henderson used to say all the time.
Called you Hoosier.
About Ellsbury people, because I think his wife's from Ellsbury, so she's an Ellsbury Hoosier.
So what do you guys? I guess we just start with this. What did you guys? If I was to say describe high school in a sentence, what would be the biggest things that you got? Oh God, not that way. Okay, let me rephrase that.
Hey, you went there. They didn't even.
Let me rephrase that before it even. I stopped it before it even went out of my mouth.
Thank you.
Come on, that's what she said. Come on. We stopped it before it even got out of my mouth. Let me answer. Let me help you out here, V. So it was actually kind of funny because what's cool about this episode is because Travis and Hank were both like super important parts of being in high school, and then even post high school. Obviously, we're all still really good friends. But so my high school kind of way of things went is there were two things that I like really kind of remembered. Was like I didn't really do sports after my sophomore year. But one of the big things for me was like the Station, which was a restaurant that Travis and I worked at with a couple of friends. And then, like hanging out after school, like for me, Hank was like at his house had a hot tub. And that was always like one of the, the best parts of the weekend was like getting to go out and do all the, the things and then playing WWE, SmackDown versus Raw. 2008, and then chilling in the hot tub at Hank's. Like, it is actually kind of funny. And whenever I watch like a movie about like high schoolers, or even talk to some of my friends that went to other schools, like they talk about like these wild parties, because we had friends from a neighboring school district, Montgomery County, who they were all fucking insane. Like, they were wild childs. But like we didn't like party hard like that. Like, we actually just like, we would, after work, like working at the station, might nab a couple beers like that we were able to get, if we could sneak them out of like the wedding reception or something. But then other than that, like, we were just pretty steady chilling. Like, I can probably speak for most of us. Like, we didn't really have wild parties in high school. We weren't really that kind of place, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it wasn't the 70s. It wasn't like how my parents described their high school times, but we had a ton of fun. We didn't get in too much trouble. I mean, we could have, but no crazy parties like that.
Yeah, I think our class lucked out, like 0 MIPs throughout like all those times. Like,
yeah,
like we had.
Well, I don't know. I remember because I hung out. I didn't really hang out with Hank too much, and then Sean, you and I didn't really start hanging out a whole lot until I started working at the station, especially our senior year.
Exactly. Yeah.
I hung out with. I got really involved with Zach Garrett and all those guys later in high school, and
never mind. You did do
quite the opposite. quite the opposite from me. But yeah, for the most part, I think I would agree. For the most part, our high school was pretty chill, I think.
Yeah.
What did you gain the most, do you think, from your high school experience? If you're to say, okay, this is what I take away. I mean, I've watched so many classes come and go, and one of the reasons when Hank approached, or when Sean approached me about this 2 years ago, it was actually 2 years ago this month, that Sean approached me about doing the podcast. And, I was able to, just to say that I have this relationship now with students who were people who were once my students. What was one of the biggest things that you guys came away from your high school experience? If I look back on them and I say, this had a big impact on my life, or that event, or that person, or what would be the biggest thing that really stood out to you guys as far as small town school shaping you, however, and go wherever you want to with this?
I know my answer. I'll let them answer first. But I'd love to hear their insight. But I definitely I know what was the biggest impact for me, for sure.
Travis?
I don't think it was a single event. I think it was a lot of things. I would say what I learned in high school, or not so much learned, but an idea I started to realize was kind of becoming myself and realizing like things I like and things I don't like, and the realization that, hey, if I don't like doing this, I don't have to do it. I think of one example was like senior year, I finally quit basketball.
Yep.
And the happiness I got from just dumping that sport and just working at the station was like, my quality of life just from finally making that decision was like, and there was a lot of things that led to my hate for basketball. I'm not going to get into that, but by far the best decision I made. But it was just learning that was one of them. It was just learning to just be me.
Yeah.
Unapologetically. And I didn't quite learn it all yet. I mean, it's something I'm still learning to be, but that idea started to come from high school, and it's really changed my life, but I wish I would have learned it sooner.
Before you guys Ethan Tucker chimes in and says, Secret Service surprise visit via Army group chat was a great takeaway. Yes, it was. That was. Whew. What would you say, Hank?
I mean, I can't. There's so many things about Clopton that I think about that all the time. That place all the time. We had so much freedom to do whatever we wanted. I mean, there was one class that I don't want to throw anybody under the bus because this instructor was a great dude, but we got a little out of hand in the shop, And you mentioned Garrett. He made a freaking weapon. Like, he could have hurt a lot of people. And we just got a slap on the hand. Like, that we should have done, but just running around in cornfields and, just doing anything. It was so much fun. And it's not like we didn't learn anything. The friendships I got there were, awesome. I'll have those forever.
Sean? You're muted. Unmute.
Oh, I thought I had fixed it. So there's a lot of different things, and I've really actually kind of learned a lot of this from talking to people that I've met that kind of didn't have the experience that we had. So we went to an extremely small school. My graduating class was 39. So there weren't a whole lot of people in the class. There's a lot of elements about everything that both you guys just said that's absolutely true. Like, I have talked to people about certain things we did, and I wouldn't necessarily say like we weren't necessarily like a bad group of kids. I mean, for the most part, I think a lot of us. Hold on. Sorry. I think a lot of us are doing fairly well, but like some of the stuff we did and said, then I have no idea if it would be allowed anywhere else in the world. And it was like pretty open. I'll never forget. There was a time where this was my 8th grade year, so this goes back a bit, where we did this thing where it was we were learning about the Civil War in history. So half of the class split up, and half of us were the Confederacy. The other half of us were the Union. And we took these rubber bands around and we would shoot stuff at one another's in the hallway. It evolved to this point where people were putting staples in the paper and were like launching them at people and in class. And that eventually evolved into this thing where for a lot of the guys in our grade, each day of the week was a different thing you could do to one another. Like on Monday, you could sack tap someone. Tuesday was like titty twister Tuesday. Something, again, stupid. But I remember we all got roped into the gym, and I'll never forget our principal yelling at us. That was like, he was screaming at one of our friends, like, and I'd never seen him that heated. He was like, "If I fart right now, are you going to kick me in the balls? Are you going to whoop my ass?" And it was just like,
was that the legend? Was that the legend?
That was, it was actually the funniest part. It was the legend Larry Loggeman yelling at our good friend Jack Hicks. It was one of the funniest things I had ever seen. But it's those kind of things, and like Travis had said, like, I don't think in big schools where there's that divide, like where you see like there's people that graduate in classes that they don't know anybody. No. You didn't have that at where we went to school. Everybody knew everybody. Everybody was involved. And I think because of that, it really led to these like really good friendships. And I know everyone's situation's different. But for me, like when I talk to Tony, sometimes she's mind blown that I'm still friends with people that I was friends with when I was 11 years old. And then not just like one or two people. I'm talking like 20 people I still know very well from that point of time in our lives. And there's a lot of people out there that just don't have that. And it's really unique. The other big thing for me, I don't care, it might sound cheesy, it might sound cliche. One of the biggest goals I've always had in my life, like I always wanted to work in entertainment. That's what I wanted to do. And it wouldn't have happened if I wasn't surrounded by the people that I grew up with. It just wouldn't have. And I can speak from it because like I had over 10 of my friends come to my basic training graduation from when I graduated from the military. I had three separate carloads of people come there for that. When I did, you guys, all three of you know, when I did my stand-up specials back home, over 100 people at both of them. Mm-hmm. The town doesn't have 100 people in it. and so for that kind of show up, when I made my professional wrestling debut, I sold, for me alone, 50 tickets to a building that fits 100. So, and that was, there's a horse behind me. I apologize.
No.
That was, 7 years after I graduated high school. And that's kind of the support that I have from the people that I met growing up. And it was because of those things and the support from those people that was able to put me in this position where I'm at now, where now I work in entertainment. I work for a professional wrestling company. I'm working towards working and doing more and getting to do the things that I love. And I literally, I can say that I owe all of that to, like, that's a big thing. Like, and a lot of people don't understand this. There's a lot of people that don't have a group of people that, are just like supportive. When I talk to Travis, when I talk to Hank, when I talk to my friends like Josh and Devin and Reed and Matt, when I talk to those friends, I not one time has any of them ever said like, hey man, like maybe you should just try something else. I've never heard it from any of them. It's always like, what are you going to do after you accomplish that? And there's people that don't have that in their life. And I can really say from like the bottom of my heart, I'm extremely, extremely blessed.
I'm not going to mention too much here, Hank, but your good friend Reed Leak has posted on the chat board, Hank's favorite memories were on the baseball bus. So we'll leave that at that.
I don't know what that means.
Well, yes. So
I will say most of my favorite memories included Matt Williams, and he was always on the bus.
Yes. One of the things,
Matt Williams.
one of the things that I remember about your class, you two classes together, was always just, and it totally blew people away. The relationship that Sean and I had, that Travis and I had, and that Hank and I had, to where Sean and I were so comfortable with each other by his junior year. You took that U.S. history class your senior year, right?
Yes, that was because that was your easiest class, right?
Yeah.
I did that on purpose. Yeah. That was my senior year.
And so Sean was being there, and he would make jokes about, mother jokes were the premium in that class. And I think like the first day that, and of course, Sean and I had just developed our relationship over 4 years, and by his senior year, my mother had been passed away for, by that time it was about 4 or 5 years. And I would make jokes about, and he's like, well, your mother, and I have this thing for necrophilia and all the first time, and Sean and I had exchanged jokes like that 1,000 times. And the freshmen in that U.S. history class were about like, what?
I'll never forget. I'll it's one of my favorite moments because I've never seen that many people awestruck at one point in time. But we were joking around and shooting the shit, and I said something. I don't actually remember what set it up, but I said something, and V fired back. He's like, "Oh, you know what? Well, you know what, Sean? I actually pretty sure I saw your mom the other day." I was like, "Oh yeah, where?" And he was like, "In Jugs magazine." I said, "Oh," I said, "That's funny." I said, "That's actually really funny you said that," because I was like, "I actually saw a picture of your mom the other day." And he's laughing. He's like, "Oh yeah, we're just here." I was like, "It was actually in a newspaper in the obituary section." and we like lost it, and all these like younger freshmen were just like,
they were dumbstruck. They were just like, is he going to send him to the office, or is he going to?
It took time to build there, because I remember actually it was my freshman year freshman or sophomore year, where believe it or not, like yelled at me, screamed at me, called me a bully at one point in time in my freshman year. And I remember because there was a certain horse-faced student that we had who was making fun of one of my friends. And he was like laughing at him, and this person had a laugh that was like, So I mimicked the laugh, and for whatever reason, it upset that person where they were all upset. And then V came up to me and just screamed, "You bully, you're the reason why people kill themselves." I was like, well,
oh man, I'm sorry, I had to mute the mic. I was choking there. Oh my gosh. I had forgotten all about that, Sean. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so it's like you have to go through that to get to where you want to go. Like, I don't know if Hank or Travis, if you guys ever had to sit at the front of V's class with your nose on the board, but I basically 50% of this fucking schnoz was filled with chalk dust all throughout high school. So
I can tell you too,
it was worth it.
I couldn't have got away with that at any other school. Putting your dad, Murdog, chimes in and says, moving from a city of 67,000 with a large school district to a town of 67, we had initial fear of too much culture shock to our children, but Clopton was a better deal than had they graduated from Dubuque Senior. So, one of the reasons I think that I continue, and I'm still at Clopton after 20 years, is when I taught at Hannibal, I saw my kids that hour, and then I never saw them for the rest of the day. And even in passing, you say, hey, and they're like, whatever, and just, but when I came to Clopton, it was, you identify with kids, and now I even see these kids outside of school, and I see them after school, and, and just doing stuff together. One of the things I want to ask you too, and this is kind of along the lines of something that I shared in our group chat today. So the ACT prep people released a statistic today that said the average American student in the last 3 years has scored, the average score over the last 3 years has been a 19.5 on the ACT. And that's on a 36-point scale. How well do you think high school, and we won't even just say Clopton, I just say, how well do you think high school, prepared you guys for what came next? Hank, you're the guest. What do you say?
Go ahead, Hank.
It's tough to quantify because I don't even remember much of my college education. But in ways that, the ways that we didn't go to school for, like actual real world stuff, how to treat people, just how to get around everyday life. I think the small town aspect helped a ton. I definitely didn't learn how to pay my taxes in school, but I know how to use a graphing calculator. But it's the real world aspect that I will be forever indebted to, I would say.
Sean?
Yeah, I'll be completely honest. There's a couple things I took away. Like obviously Travis and I have said it 100 times. I would say easily the most I've taken from high school was 4 years in your class. Like that was probably where the bread and butter of a lot of the stuff that I actually learned and have taken and actually used, like in real world application, came from there, because it's not math. And it wasn't any of the other subjects that I really kind of took home. So I'm not surprised. I know that things have definitely changed for a lot of students too. Like one thing that's real common now, and I think actually Clopton has it, where we did not have it whenever I was in high school, was now there's like work study, where I know at some schools 75% of a student's day is just going to work, and they take like a class or two. Like I know students that where I was recruiting that legit would show up for 2 subjects. Like in one school year, they took 4 subjects, and the rest of the time they were working, and they graduated with a diploma. But it's like, I don't know how well prepared for like something like the ACT. Now, jumping into the workforce, they're going to be squared away. If you've been working a full-time job as, you're a student since you've been 16, like you're going to have you should have a pretty good work ethic. Like you know how it goes. I think I owe, and I think Travis can attest to that. That's why we have such a hard work ethic now, is because we worked 40 hours a week essentially, while balancing schoolwork since like junior senior year. So and even throughout the summer, like Travis and I, holy shit, that summer between graduating and then going into our freshman year of college, for me, was one of the best worst summers where it was so cool to get so tight with Travis. Like, and we had already been tight from the station, but like we legit woke up, drove to work together, worked the shittiest job I've ever had in my life, went to the gym, went back home, rinse, wash, repeat. Like that was our summer before we started school. And for those that are wondering what the job was, we worked at a school book warehouse, Houghton Mifflin Harcourt, and it was the shittiest job. And at the time, we are like, it pays great. It's $9 an hour. That's way fucking better than minimum wage. And now I look at it and I'm like surprised that I didn't walk in there and slice my neck open with a box cutter that we had in front of us every morning, because it was this massive warehouse where the radio worked in one aisle, but you couldn't have headphones on. The air conditioning was basically someone blowing a fart in your face the whole time. It was
just fans. There was no air conditioning.
Yeah, it was definitely like that kind of set the tone. And but yeah, I'm not surprised. And I just think like, there's other things like, I don't think that when we were in high school, I really ever had to worry about, like, this sounds silly, but like school shootings like still weren't at that level where they are now. And like, I legitimately have talked to high school students. They're like, I think about it all the time when I go to school. So I just think there's a lot of different factors now. And like, we didn't have Chromebooks when we went to school. Like, we didn't carry a laptop to every single class like students do now. Like, there's a lot of those kind of learning elements have changed, which I can only imagine for you as an educator. But me as a student, like, I would have probably just been on the hub 8 hours a day if you had a Chromebook in my hand half the time. So I don't know how I might get anything.
Fortune would have had a fit.
Fortune.
Well, not having that.
And that, when I compare as classes have gone along, you guys were, what, 15, 16? What year?
13, 14.
We graduated in 14.
Okay. So then Sean and Hank, you were 13 then, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And so, Hank, you're 10 years coming up this year. And I mean, when you really think about how much life has changed for the kids that are in now, our seniors now, compared to 10 years ago, and how much lifestyles have changed, and how much, Sean mentioned, first of all, Sean mentions school shootings. When you look at everything else cultural, I mean, to you, what do you guys think is the greatest cultural difference between now, 2022, and 2013, 2014? What did you guys, I mean, where do you see the biggest cultural shift or the biggest issue shift at from when you were in school now, or in school back then, to where we're at now?
It's hard not to say school shootings after you set us up for that, but to say something different, I would probably have to say politics. That was one thing that struck me in your last episode, was I think you found out your friends, lifetime friends, his parents' political
That was
beliefs.
The first time I'd ever heard it, yeah.
Yeah, and that just blew my mind. I'm like, looking back at, like, say 2008 or something, I mean, even then, first black president ever elected, no one even cared what your political beliefs were. I mean, it was starting to change then, but I think it all changed when social media became more prevalent. But I would say politics.
And was social media that big when you guys were?
No, Facebook was
Not
getting big,
as
but
big.
there wasn't phones really yet. I mean, I remember talking about going to college, and the coach that was recruiting me was like, "Yeah, we got a good program for physical therapy." And instead of getting on Google, which I didn't have access to, I didn't have internet at my house in 2012. I didn't get to fact check the guy, and I get there and it's an exercise science degree. So that's a story I always tell people is like we didn't have internet in our house until 2015.
Wow.
But that was way out in the sticks, in 262.
Well, in the 262. What about you, Travis? What do you see as the biggest cultural, I mean, as far as the separation or between now and then?
I mean, definitely politics. I mean, I agree with Hank. It was definitely '08 when I really started to see a change, or at least I started to hear more of a difference. I mean, just with my family members, no one really talked politics until like the '08 election, and then you really saw it progress after that. But I think we've said this before, but definitely social media has changed a lot. And then the smartphones. I mean, Hank made a good point. I didn't really start seeing smartphones like regularly until probably my senior year.
Yeah,
it was
And
my junior, senior
yeah,
year.
and I was trying.
Yeah.
I was trying to think the first. I mean, even when I came to Clopton, the first kid, strangely enough, the first kid I remember having a phone was your brother, Travis.
Oh yeah.
Cody had
BlackBerry?
Cody. Yeah, no, he had that big, thick brick phone.
Oh, he did, and then he got the BlackBerry.
Yeah, I was just like 1975 called and they're looking for their phone. That thing was huge, but
Oh yeah.
no, the other thing, and Sean, I'm going to bring this story up because it was really relevant to me about today versus back then. So Sean was student council president. Was it your senior year or junior year? I can't remember.
Of student council, my senior year.
Okay, so Sean was wanting. Now, mind you, so this is in 2013, 2014. And Sean and I, one of the unique things about our student teacher relationship was at the time, Sean and I were, I thought, maybe I was misperceiving it, Sean, but we were definitely on two different sides of the political, spectrum. And one of the things that Sean pushed for, he wanted to do like a diversity. He approached me, and I think it was Lynn Hall at the time who was the co-sponsor. I think this is before Henderson came along, and he said, "Hey, I want to have a diversity." You remember this, Sean, where you were like, and he said,
I remember 100% what you're talking about.
And that was still back in I was still in, my latter days of my conservative heydays. And I thought, well, let's throw it up to Mr. Loggeman and see what he says. And Mr. Loggeman, was very open-minded, but he was also looking at the view of the community as a whole. And he was just like, yeah, we're not going to try to open up that can of worms. And I remember, Sean, I remember you being really upset about that. It's like, well, man, how closed-minded were we and everything else? Whereas today, if somebody were to bring that up today and we didn't allow that, we'd probably have a lawsuit on our hands. But
It's a pretty big change.
I mean, I look at school today, and I want to go back to that ACT thing. The biggest, you guys were blessed to be and I know this sounds weird, but to be pre-COVID. When COVID came,
I would agree with that.
When COVID came through, that changed everything. I mean, everything, and how we react and how we interact and how we, you guys were we communicate on Google Classroom. We use all these different, social media is driving everything now. And yeah, I would totally agree with what you guys say though, but social media during COVID was like, okay, we're going to connect virtually and we're going to do all this stuff. And now I think the generation and even the us generation of teachers are so dependent upon technology that it's almost, like you said, Sean, carrying around a Chromebook from classroom to classroom. I mean, there's some school districts, ours isn't one of them yet, but I mean, there's schools that are getting rid of textbooks altogether and saying, hey, we're going to have all your textbooks on your computer screen and we're going to communicate via classroom and we're going to have a classroom discussion, a virtual classroom discussion this weekend on, and to me, I mean, technology is great, but at the same time, you guys know how to communicate with each other. If Sean shows, I remember it was what was it? It was this summer, right before Sean went to moved out to California, and Travis and Sean, hey, we're going to be in town. Let's meet up at McNear's. We'll have, we're going to have a few drinks. And we sat around and we communicated. But yet, if you go to any place now where you see this younger generation, I know this sounds totally old guy, but kids don't know. The new generation that's coming up does not know how to do face to face. I mean, Sean, I bet you saw that tons of times when in your recruiting days, that, a kid can be as loud as they want to on social media, but when it came to actual face-to-face discussion and face-to-face, I mean, what?
100%. There was a kid that I had actually worked with in like recruiting that was, you couldn't get a word out of him, like just sitting next to him. Like I tried talking to him and he'd be like the weirdest kid in the room, but then he would text me oh yeah, I did this today and this, and it was so much fun. Like he could not talk to people, but he could text and do like over the phone communication like it was no one's business.
Well, and Hank, you see, I mean, your business is 95% working with people anyway, and I mean, just with investors and stuff like that. I mean, how valuable was communication skills, learning that and developing that within, I mean, high school, college? How has that played really into your life?
I'd probably say more than I could imagine. I think going back to the small community, small school, I was forced to have like legit conversations, like say with Miss Schaefer as I walked down the hallway, because she would sit and ask me, how are you? How's your family? What are your plans? Like all this stuff. And I mean, that was with everybody. Everybody was good, decent person. You always had a very long, thoughtful conversation with them if you had the time. But I mean, I've never really thought about that. So thanks for bringing that up. But
and I think the value of community, and I'll go back to what I said earlier, and kind of what your dad said earlier too, Sean, was being in a town of 60. When you were, I guess, at Dubuque, Iowa, 67,000 people, to where Eolia has 500-600, Clarksville has less than 1,000.
Like 300 people.
Yeah, and I mean, and everybody know there are positives and there are negatives to that, because there's some people who want to get out of that, and they value anonymity. They value. I mean, I'm sure that there's kids in a school of 60, in a school of 6,000 or 5,000, wherever Dubuque was, and say, man, I had my group of friends, but outside of that, like you said, seniors didn't know anything about freshmen. Freshmen didn't know anything about juniors or anything like that. But I think one of the values of small town education, and you guys are proof of that, is that you create lifelong, across the board friendships. We have those memories. We have those that I think that the bigger schools kind of miss out on. And you're taught to deal with real life issues, because it's not like, okay, something happened dramatic in our school and I can just slip her over into this other crowd in a school of 5,000. Whereas in a school when a high school has less than 100 kids in it, you're going to deal with that issue right up front. And I think there was a lot of good life lessons to be learned in that, hey, you're going to learn from this and we're going to build from this, where you don't have that in a bigger school.
You don't. And I mean, even in some of the things that you would never expect, like there's no other school on earth that I'm aware of that a student could get on an after-school prom bus.
Oh, man.
And then while on the after-prom bus, get a Hummer next to his best friend's mom. I don't think it happens at any other district, but it happened at ours. And that's what's impressive.
Bless America.
That's fired.
No, I'm okay, but I'm being serious.
Yeah, it's true though.
There's that doesn't happen anywhere else.
Nope.
But again, like it's those kind of things. Legitimately, as silly as it sounds, like shape who we were and how we go about things. Like again, and so to put it in perspective, this also just goes to show how stupid I am. But I remember when Hank was working for Northwestern Mutual, so I don't have my timeline messed up here. But when Hank worked for them back in the day, I remember he invited me to Kansas City because he was like he was out with some friends. Like I was either in Kansas City, he's like, "Hey, I'm going to dinner with some colleagues from work." And I remember because it's funny because like Hank was with these guys that he worked with, and I'm not gonna lie, they were cool enough to work with, but they were squares. They're not anybody that you'd like see me out with.
Grease balls.
And it was funny because the entire time we were with him, I spoke with an Irish accent. The entire time.
He didn't tell me he was doing this either.
And I did.
He went up, shook a hand, and he sounded just like McGregor. And they were.
And it was funny because again, but that's just the relationship I had with Hank. Without skipping a beat, he's like, oh, he's a method actor, and he's playing an Irish character right now.
They're asking me like, did he immigrate here? It's like, no, he's a method actor. He's graduated.
So, but it's like that's one of the funnier things. Like, it just when we've gone out into the world and we've like met different people. Like I know, there's good friends from the military that Travis has made that I'll never meet, and there's friends that Hank has through work or where he's gone to school, like where he played baseball at college, that I'll never interact with. And I just think like it's so unique because I feel like a part of where we came from, there's always some of these like, those like these legendary stories of like, like these people from back home that we might talk about to these people. And there's no way that really happened. There's no way that's a real thing. And I'm like, you guys don't understand this.
Kind of like Reed Leak just said, Sean convinced an entire school I was a foreign exchange student.
I did. And the funny thing is he, not even just like another school, I convinced people that had seen him for years, that had known him for years, that he was a foreign exchange student. And at his senior night, one of the most important nights of his high school football career was senior night. And I got the entire fan section to cheer for our Polish foreign exchange student. And for those that don't know, our football team was co-op, with another school. So we had our school, Clopton, and another school, Ellsbury, and we were combined for a football team. There were parents from the other football team who were so convinced that he was a foreign exchange student, they walked up to him after the game, stuck their hands out like idiots and said, "You are really good at football," like he was a fucking idiot. And I'm like, he's been on the roster for 4 years. Like, it's those things. There was, when we first met, so again, to put it in perspective, we still call him the Donk. We call him Donkey. We went, and again, we went to a basketball tournament with a stuffed donkey from Shrek. And that was the mascot of the fan section, and all these other schools are like, why is that? And we explained to them why we had it. And then we had all these other schools cheering for our team. Every girl from every other school was like, who's that guy? And I need to know why.
They stole that stuffed animal out of Ryan Brewer's siblings' baby crib. I don't even know what it was. Ryan Brewer's little kid.
But it's like, and then again, that same school, we have a good friend named Devin. For the listeners that don't know, our friend Devin has had a full-grown beard since he was in third grade. But we convinced
the best one.
So our high school basketball coach had a son who, at the time, like was very short for his age, very short, looked very young. So even though he was in like, I don't know, fourth grade, he looked like he was maybe 4 or 5, maybe. Mm-hmm. And he would go to all of our basketball games. Well, we went to a game, and that, he was running around the court, and these people asked, like, who's that kid? And we pointed at our friend Devin. You see that old guy right there? And they're like, yeah. We're like, that's his son. And they're like, what? And we're like, yeah, when he was a freshman, he got a senior pregnant, and she went off to college and left him to raise the kid. So the kid comes to our basketball games with him all the time. And they bought into it. And we even told the kid to tell them that our friend Devin was his dad, and he did it. And it was just those.
Oh my gosh!
Those kind of things were a constant. It was never ending. Like
Devin did have a beard in 8th grade, and Devin had run track for me 7th and 8th grade, and there were a couple of times where I was like, I actually had other coaches ask me, how old
where's his birth certificate?
Yeah, seriously, there were coaches like, how old is that kid? I said, oh, he's a true 8th grader. Like, he's got a beard, and I'm like, I'm not going to tell him to shave, But yeah, he didn't have it in 7th grade, but he had it in 8th grade.
That's the only unfortunate thing for him, was that he was 6 foot in like 3rd grade, and then he never
grew anymore after that. No. Never grew anymore.
I remember in 5th grade using the bathroom next to him, and it took him 20 minutes to go at number 1 when he was in 4th grade.
Yeah, I told that story at his wedding. How when we were in college together, he would get up in the middle of the night to pee, and it would wake me up when he got up to go pee, and I'd fall back asleep, and then I'd wake up an hour later, and it was him coming back to bed after going pee. Yeah, so like even as like an 18-year-old, he had the prostate of a 94-year-old, and so it was just like
the curious case of Benjamin Button's Devin Linton. So,
but just in his balls. So that was like the one.
One of our other listeners, Caitlin Held, one of your classmates, said, going back to the gun thing, my freshman year, I borrowed first trap shooting shotgun from Mr. V. We stored our shotguns in the ag office on days we had practice. Just carried them in nonchalantly on our backs in the morning. I remember this morning before classes, and she said she had friends that went to school in St. Louis that were required to have clear backpacks, and I just, some of the stuff that we were able to pull off, and, we talk about some of the things that we were talking about in our group chat on our fantasy football league. We were talking about, making these videos, and Sean and Hank and were just notorious. You guys made all these videos, like, we won't go into detail, but involving school buses and rabbits and, and then, that was Sean. And then, we would do these video projects I would do these like, okay, we're going to make these movies for Ancient Civ or Modern World. And I'd go in and tell Logman, hey, we're going to go out to the cornfield, or we're going to go out to the bean field back behind school. We'll be back in 45 minutes, and he's like, nobody cared. Go out there, But now, I mean, and that's another thing too, that I really the generation of kids now we have, because we live in such a litigious society. I mean, whenever we move an inch at school, we have to have we got to have a form for this, and we've got to have a form for that, and everything else. But man, I mean, just some of the stuff that, I mean, bordering on the verge of death in some situations, I mean, just, parents back then laughed it off, and I mean, of course I knew Sean's parents and I knew Hank's parents. I didn't know Travis's family that well, but, it was just that time in society that we lived in. And, I hate to think about, Sean, like when Jam gets to, well, especially out there in Los Angeles, when she gets to be a school age and what she's going to have to encounter, and, this kind of goes off topic, but this is one of the reasons why I'm beginning to start counting down my years, because it's getting to that point where, I mean, I can look back and I can say, man, the good old days. And I mean, my first year at Clopton, which was way before you guys, I had a student who mooned another student in my classroom. And he got a slap on the wrist for it, and that was it.
And he wanted a slap on the ass.
Yeah, he did. But yeah, but today that kid would be, oh my gosh, sex offender and all this other stuff, and it just really, in my 20 years at Clopton, it's just weird how much things have transformed.
I remember there's a couple things specifically that kind of stick out to me that like I remember one of the students that Travis and I graduated with that Hank also knew very well. He was friends with, actually pantsed the high school basketball coach, and nothing came from it. He pantsed him.
Really?
Well, I think the coach wanted to pretend it never happened and forget about it.
Yeah. But I remember there's one thing I did specifically my junior year. Travis, did you have did you have Miss Moniger the same year I did?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, so I remember she gave us this assignment that was you either could like record a video doing something, or you can give like a live news broadcast to the class, like over whatever subject we were doing. I don't even remember. But everyone just recorded a video, but I was like, no, I'm going to do the news broadcast. And so what I did was I like made an anchor desk, and I did that. And I had previously recorded videos. And one thing that I did that I feel like I should have gotten in trouble for, or would get in trouble for now if it ever like got out there, was I went to I want to say it was like my a kindergarten class, and we recorded the students. I asked them, I said, what's your favorite part about recess? And they would give me their answer. They'd be like, it's so much fun. You get to do it with your friends. I want to do it all the time. And like, those were their answers. So in the class, when I was giving my news report, I was talking about the subject of underage drinking. And I remember going, I was like, and here at Clopton, underage drinking has become a huge problem. We interviewed a couple of students from the school to get their thoughts on underage drinking. And it would cut to like, just you'd hear a voiceover of what do you like about underage drinking, and then it's fun. You get to do it with your friends. You get to go crazy. And it's like I legitimately just don't think you get away with those things at other places. But it was a good time.
Oh. Yeah, there's a lot of, I wish I could read all, there's a ton of Clopton folks here on our chat board tonight that are telling a ton of stories over here. But yeah, I mean, it is something that, and I look at, here's how I view school. And this has been my philosophy probably since for the last 15, 20 years. Is anymore, I want to prepare students. Like Sean said, math didn't mean anything to me, or when I look at the students that I have today, I think my greatest goal that I want to do is to create. Seeing Sean right now with his daughter on his lap, okay. That does my heart good, because I know that Sean works very hard to provide for that little girl right there. I know that I saw this morning Travis posted a video, and I commented on Travis, what were you, 500 feet up in the air? Something like
155.
That's enough.
And that was after the first hit of the blunt. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that was, but still. And then I see this successful investment guy down here in the other corner, who I couldn't be more proud of. One of my biggest goals that I ever wanted to, that I still want to, is to make successful people the best version of themselves. Whereas when you look at these bigger high schools, they're more data driven. And this is one of my biggest complaints about education, is that in these bigger schools, kids are looked at as a number. You guys just in this last hour have mentioned teachers, and you mentioned people, and you mentioned relationship. And I know a lot of teachers who came from bigger schools. one of the friends of you guys, we jokingly talk about our friend Trey all the time, and we've had his sister Casey on. Casey, who taught her first 5 years at Troy, took a pay cut to come to Clopton for that very reason. For that very reason that Troy just and there are great. I have a lot of friends who teach at Troy, great teachers at Troy. But there are people in that system that say, okay, we've got to do this, 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 and this. And instead of one of the guys that I used to teach with, he no longer teaches at Clopton, but one of the things he said about his kids go to Clopton, he said, Clopton is the closest thing to a private school that a lot of the people, that people come to, because you get the one-on-one. I can pull a kid out of the hallway and say, hey, something's pissing you off today. What's going on? Or something, and you develop relationships and you develop character. And I look at you guys, and there's not a day that goes by that I, when I see content posted on Facebook, when I see Sean, Sean and I were talking about his wrestling, the wrestling show, and I'm so proud, and I say, hey, I know the guy who helped produce that show. That's a, quality thing. I know, one of the reasons why I have good 5G service, my man up there climbing the towers getting it done, and the reason why I'm poor and other people are rich is because of, Hank Owens. So, but, I think that, and that's part of the reason why I wanted to do this series too. And we've got one more guy yet to do next week, and he's still got to think of somebody to, have on, but this is one of the reasons why I wanted to do this, is because, we want to create something that's going to last in the next generations. We want to contribute something that I can walk away from, that you guys can walk away from and say, man, we did that. We helped. We were a part of that. And you guys are part of a living legacy that I think that I will always be proud of. So.
And as you should be, like, and I know for a fact that Hank and Travis can say the same thing when it comes to being at Clopton. I don't think any teacher has touched more students figuratively and literally than you. I'm joking. But no.
Here's my pink slip. Here you go.
Even like other people that I've talked to that you don't speak with too on the regular, like one of my good friends, Josh, has openly spoken about how much of an impact you made on him at such a young age, and the impact that you continue to leave on people. So I definitely can say, like, we've talked about it over and over again. A lot of kind of our appreciation of that period of time. You were a huge part of that, and you should be proud of that, because I know we're not the only ones. We weren't the first. We definitely aren't going to be the last. So, as our friend now, not just a mentor and a teacher, seriously, I can say that all of us at some point have taken something you directly have taught us, whether it was a life lesson or an actual lesson, and have used that in life. And that is something that no one can take away from you, and you seriously should be proud of. And I can say the same thing about Travis and Hank, like two guys that were there for me and very different, weird transitional parts of my life. And again, I've talked to both of them like openly about that, where I owe, like, to literally just put it into perspective, when it comes to like the conversations I've had with Hank, again, when I was like, hey, I'm going to go to a professional wrestling school. And Hank's like, I'm surprised you haven't done it already. That was his response, because I'm surprised it took this long. And then when it comes to Travis, like, very specifically, I remember part of the main reason why I'm able to live in Los Angeles and pursue the career that I'm doing is because I joined the military. I would have never joined the military if it wasn't for that summer where Travis and I literally trained as if we were getting ready to join the military. Like that was the goal of that summer and the training, and going to, from Ultimate Fitness in Troy to the pool afterwards and doing laps in a hotel pool. Like that's, those are the kind of things. And then when Travis and I lived together and had Hank up every weekend that he wasn't, playing baseball. And so it's those kind of things that like have truly shaped where I'm at. Like it's crazy. I legitimately, I talk to other people about it. I think Travis is one of the most level-headed individuals, hardworking individuals I've ever met.
Amen.
You take Hank, who went from one of the horniest guys I've ever known in life.
Amen.
To
Yep.
one of the horniest, most intelligent individuals. Some things never change. Some things never change.
Don't care.
But no, like it's like seriously, it's one of those things where I still to this day, like if there's a question about something, I always revert to these guys and my friends Reed and my friends Devin and them. And so those are the kind of things, like I'm truly proud that we have those kinds of relationships, and I owe so much, not just of my family, but my absorbed family, like you guys, the
parenting moment.
Yeah, big time.
I never thought I'd be saying that to Sean either.
Either.
At least the last one to have kids. That's what I would say.
Well, that you know of, Hank. Hank, that you know of, that you.
No, I'm keeping good tabs. My clock is ticking.
Well, it was so good to have you on tonight, Hank. Thanks for joining us yet again. I think Hank is our, if memory serves me, next to Hank and then Matt Edelman, I think our top two. Hank is the top guest that we have had the most times on the podcast, so he holds that distinction.
He's easily the most
accomplished anything.
I'm
glad I talked over that.
That's why I had to repeat it.
He's the most gifted.
We can't have him on that often because we record video and we don't have enough gigs to put his balls on the camera all the time. So that's like our main problem.
Yes,
pretty sure my grandmother's watching.
Hey, Granny,
Actually,
thank you for watching tonight.
Before we go, I'm going to close it on this. I remember very specifically at a high school basketball game, because my mom jokes about this, where she was sitting next to Hank's grandmother. This is my mother sitting next to Hank's grandmother at a basketball game, and Hank was playing and he got hit. He got hit in his balls, and yes, it is. And Mom said Lenora grabbed her and goes, "He got hit in the donk." I said,
"No, he didn't."
Where to God?
Yes. I don't remember that story. Yes. I've never heard that story before.
Because you were dying in the middle of the court. But even even all the lunch ladies, that was the talk of the town. So
yeah,
we didn't have much to be proud. So that's what
I remember.
Again,
a certain math teacher, because they used to make the noises in the hallway, and I never liked that. But a certain math teacher walked up to me and she goes, "Why do they make that noise? You don't have donkey teeth." No.
Oh,
that's exactly what it is.
Lord,
I love it.
I wish that one would catch on a little bit.
And with that,
thank you guys all so much for giving us a listen. Thanks for everyone for commenting, and those that are going to listen later on as this goes live on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Sirius, wherever you guys do your podcast listening. Again, thank you all so much. I've loved doing this series. This one's one of those kind of loose fit where we don't have to kind of deep dive into something so specific, especially when there's a lot of craziness in the world. I know we've talked about it, but I kind of use this hour and a half as kind of a decompress hour to get to kind of chat and catch up with my friends when everything's so stressful. There's always that kind of silver lining at the end of the week. So Hank, thanks again so much for coming on, and I actually love that. It's one of those things where even though you were my hometown guest, there's whoever we talk to with Travis, we're all going to know, so like it's just one of those cool things. So from the bottom of my heart to all of our listeners, thank you so much. Even if none of you guys cared about any of the stuff we had to talk about, we had a good time.
Yep.
So we can't wait to talk to you guys next week. We'll see you then.